The room was quiet, too quiet. Thousands of people were sitting in front of their televisions. No one was talking, no one was moving. It was July 1969 and the whole world was watching one small screen. On that screen was a black and white image from space. Something very big was about to happen. Inside a control room in America, men were sitting at long tables. Big screens were on the wall, numbers were changing every second. These men were from NASA. They had trained for years for this moment. But now fear was in the air. This was not just a space mission. This was a test of hope. This was a test of courage. At the center of this mission was a calm man named Neil Armstrong. He was not shouting. He was not panicking. He was sitting quietly inside a small spacecraft far away from Earth. Beside him were his two teammates. Outside the window was deep, dark space. The mission was called Apollo 11. For the world, it was history in the making, but for the men inside the spacecraft, it was a fight for survival. As the spacecraft moved closer to the moon, the tension grew. The moon looked calm from far away, silent, cold, beautiful, but everyone at NASA knew the truth. The moon was dangerous. One small mistake could end everything. Inside the control room, someone whispered, "Fuel is tight." Another voice said, "We are running out of time." The spacecraft was now preparing to land. This was the most dangerous part of the mission. No human had ever done this before. No one truly knew what would happen. Suddenly, an alarm started to beep inside the spacecraft. Beep, beep, beep. Neil Armstrong looked at the screen in front of him. The computer was showing an error. It was not supposed to do that. He stayed calm, but his heart was beating fast. The computer was overloaded. It could fail at any second. Back on Earth, the control room froze. "What is that alarm?" someone asked. "We don't know," another voice replied. Seconds were passing. Fuel was burning. The spacecraft was dropping fast. Then came the desperate call. Neil Armstrong spoke into the radio. His voice was calm but serious. "Program alarm," he said. The men in the control room looked at each other. Sweat rolled down their faces. One wrong answer could mean death for the astronauts. A young engineer checked his notes again and again. His hands were shaking. Finally, he spoke. "It's okay," he said. "They can continue." Those words saved the mission, but the danger was not over. As the spacecraft moved lower, Neil Armstrong saw something unexpected. The landing area was not safe. There were rocks everywhere, big rocks, sharp rocks. If they landed there, the spacecraft could tip over and crash. There was no time to ask for permission. Neil Armstrong made a choice. He took manual control. The spacecraft moved forward slowly. Fuel was almost gone. Warnings were sounding. Everyone at NASA was counting seconds. 30 seconds, someone said. 20 seconds. No one was breathing. Then a calm voice came through the radio. "Houston," Neil Armstrong said, "the Eagle has landed." For a moment there was silence. Then the room exploded with sound, cheers, tears, relief. Men hugged each other. Some fell into their chairs. They had done it. Humans were on the moon, but behind the smiles there was fear. The fuel had almost run out. If they were just a few seconds late, the mission would have failed. The world did not see how close they were to disaster. Outside, the moon remained silent. Inside the spacecraft, Neil Armstrong rested his head for a moment. He knew the hardest part was not over yet. They still had to walk on the moon. They still had to come back home. And there was something else. Even before the first step on the moon, questions had already begun. Some people would later ask strange things. Why did the landing look so perfect? Why did everything go right at the last second? At that moment, no one cared about questions. They were alive, they were on the moon, but history has a way of hiding secrets. And this mission was just beginning. The celebration on Earth slowly faded. The cameras stopped shaking. But on the moon, everything was quiet. Inside the lunar module, two men were sitting very still. Air was thin, the space was small, every sound felt loud, every breath mattered. Outside, the moon waited in silence. This was not like the movies. There was no music, no dramatic sound, only deep silence. Neil Armstrong checked the instruments again. Everything looked normal, but normal did not mean safe. The moon had no air, no help, no second chance. Back on Earth, NASA asked them to rest. The plan was clear. They would sleep first, then they would walk on the moon. But sleep did not come easily. The lunar module was cold, hard, uncomfortable. Every small movement made a noise. Neil Armstrong closed his eyes, but his mind stayed awake. He thought about Earth, about the millions of people watching, about one simple truth. If something went wrong now, no one could save them. Hours passed slowly. Then it was time. Neil Armstrong prepared to leave the spacecraft. This moment had been practiced many times on Earth, but this was different. This was real. One wrong move could tear the suit. One small mistake could end a life. He opened the hatch carefully. Darkness filled the doorway. The moon looked strange. The ground was gray, empty, silent. It did not look friendly. It did not look dangerous either. It looked like it did not care. Neil Armstrong stepped down slowly, one step, then another. His heart was beating fast, but his body stayed calm. He placed his foot on the moon's surface. The dust moved gently. It was soft, but not like sand. This is it, he thought. Back on Earth, millions were watching again. The image was slow, the sound was not clear, but the moment was real. Neil Armstrong spoke his famous words, simple words, calm words, words that would live forever. For the world, it was a perfect moment, but something felt strange. The radio connection was not smooth. There were short pauses, small delays. NASA listened closely. Every sound mattered. Do you copy? Someone asked. Yes, came the answer, but it sounded distant. The moon was playing tricks, the light was harsh, shadows were dark and sharp, the surface reflected light in a strange way. The astronauts moved slowly, almost like they were floating. Everything looked unreal. As Neil Armstrong moved forward, he noticed something odd. The ground looked the same in every direction, no landmarks, no clear distance. It was easy to lose direction. Back on Earth, scientists watched the screens carefully. Keep it short, they said. Don't go too far. They were not afraid of the moon, they were afraid of the unknown. The astronauts planted the flag, it stood still. No wind, no sound, just silence. Photos were taken, samples were collected, everything looked perfect. Too perfect. The moon did not react, no dust storm, no movement, just quiet. Somewhere on Earth, a few people felt uneasy. They could not explain why. The pictures looked strange. The shadows looked different. The silence felt heavy, but most people were happy. Inside the lunar module, time was running out. The astronauts had to return inside. Staying too long was risky. Neil Armstrong looked back one last time. The moon did not say goodbye. When they closed the hatch, the silence returned, thick, heavy, endless. Then came a new fear. The return engine had never been tested on the moon before. If it failed, they would stay there forever. NASA checked every number, every signal. Prepare for liftoff, came the command. The astronauts waited. Seconds felt like hours. Then suddenly the engine ignited. The spacecraft lifted off the moon's surface. Dust flew below. The moon stayed behind, silent again. Cheers erupted on Earth, but deep inside NASA, some people stayed quiet. They knew the truth. They were lucky, very lucky, and luck does not answer questions. As Apollo 11 moved away from the moon, the world believed the story was complete. But history was only opening its first door, because soon people would start to look closer. And when they did, they would begin to ask questions. No one expected. The moon slowly became smaller. Apollo 11 was moving away from the gray surface, leaving behind silence and dust. Inside the spacecraft, the astronauts were quiet. Their faces were calm, but their minds were full of thoughts. Most dangerous moments were not over yet. Coming back was never easy. Space looked peaceful, but it was not friendly. One small problem could turn into a disaster. There was no repair shop in space, no rescue team waiting nearby. Neil Armstrong checked the controls again. Everything looked fine, but space missions had a strange habit. Problems appeared when people felt safe. Back on Earth, NASA was watching closely. The screens showed green lights. Signals were clear. Still, no one relaxed. The return journey was long, very long. As the spacecraft moved, something strange happened. The radio signal became weak, voices broke, words disappeared. For a few seconds, Earth could not hear the astronauts clearly. The room at NASA went silent again. Say that again, someone asked. No answer. 5 seconds passed, 10 seconds, then the signal came back. We're okay, the voice said. Relief filled the room, but fear stayed. Space was reminding them who was in control. Inside the spacecraft, the astronauts felt the distance. Earth was now a small blue dot, beautiful, far away. It felt unreal. Home looked fragile. Hours passed. The spacecraft entered a quiet phase. No alarms, no calls, just steady movement through space. This was the moment when the mind became dangerous. Neil Armstrong looked out the window. He thought about the moon, about the silence, about how close they came to knew something important. The public saw success. NASA saw risk. Only the astronauts felt the truth. As they moved closer to Earth, another challenge waited. The spacecraft had to enter Earth's atmosphere at the correct angle. Too steep and it would burn, too shallow and it would bounce back into space. There was no room for error. NASA gave instructions. The astronauts listened carefully. Every number mattered. Then the spacecraft hit the atmosphere. Fire surrounded it. From the outside, it looked like a shooting star, bright, fast, burning. Inside, the heat rose quickly. The shield shook. The noise was loud, very loud. For several minutes, there was no radio contact, no voice, no signal, no confirmation. The world waited. Families held their breath. NASA stared at silent screens. These were the longest minutes of the mission. Then a signal appeared. They're back, someone whispered. The parachutes opened, big, white, beautiful. The spacecraft slowed down and landed safely in the ocean. Apollo 11 had returned. The world celebrated again. Smiles, flags, music, history books were ready to be written. But NASA did something unexpected. The astronauts were not allowed to go home. They were taken into isolation. A small room, glass walls, doctors watching, cameras everywhere. NASA said it was for safety. They feared moon germs, unknown bacteria, invisible danger. But some people found this strange. Why isolate heroes? Why so much fear? The astronauts waved from behind glass. They smiled, but their eyes looked tired, maybe confused, maybe thoughtful. Neil Armstrong spoke to reporters later. His words were polite, calm, short. He did not talk much about feelings. He did not talk much about fear. Some people noticed this. They noticed how quiet he was, how careful his words sounded. The moon rocks were studied. Scientists examined every detail. They said everything was normal, everything made sense, but not everyone agreed. Some people zoomed into photos, others slowed down videos. They pointed at shadows, at reflections, at strange details. NASA gave explanations. Most people accepted them. Some did not, because one question stayed alive. Why did the mission feel too perfect and too close to failure at the same time? Apollo 11 was called the greatest achievement of mankind, and maybe it was. But great achievements often leave behind deep shadows. The astronauts returned as heroes, the moon returned to silence, and the world moved on. But the story did not end there, because years later people would still look up at the moon and wonder, not how did they do it, but what did they not tell us? To be continued. Time passed, days became months, months became years. Apollo 11 slowly moved from breaking news to history books. Schools taught it, TV shows replayed it. The world accepted one simple idea. Humans walked on the moon, but history has a strange habit. It waits, then it asks questions. One day someone looked closely at a photo. It was a normal photo. Neil Armstrong standing on the moon. The ground was gray, the sky was black, the flag was nearby. Nothing looked strange at first. Then someone zoomed in. They noticed the shadows. The shadows were not pointing in the same direction. That was the first crack. People began to talk, quietly at first, then louder. They asked simple questions. If there is only one light source, the sun, why do shadows go different ways? NASA gave an answer. The moon's surface reflects light. The ground is uneven. Cameras change angles. The answer sounded logical, but the questions did not stop. Another photo appeared. The American flag looked like it was moving, but the moon has no wind. How can a flag wave without air? People asked. NASA explained again. The flag had a metal rod. It moved when planted, then it stayed still. Again logical. Still doubt stayed alive. Someone noticed something else. There were no stars in the photos. The moon has no atmosphere. Stars should be bright, very bright. So where are the stars? People asked. NASA answered calmly. Camera settings were made for bright light. Stars were too faint to appear. Once again it made sense, but something had changed. People were no longer just watching history. They were studying it. More photos were checked. More videos slowed down. More details were pulled apart. The movement of astronauts looked strange to some people, too smooth, too slow, almost like slow motion. NASA explained gravity. The moon has weaker gravity. Bodies move differently. Still, some people were not convinced. They said, it looks like a movie. Then someone said something dangerous. What if it was a movie? That idea spread fast. The world was changing. People no longer trusted big voices easily. Governments had lied before. Wars had secrets. Information had been hidden, so people wondered, could this be another secret? The name Neil Armstrong appeared everywhere again. Interviews were replayed. His words were studied. His silence was noticed. He was a hero, but he was also very quiet. When asked about the moon, he answered carefully. Short sentences, no drama, no strong emotion. Some people said this proved nothing. Others said silence can hide many things. NASA felt the pressure. They released more data, more explanations, more technical details, diagrams, calculations, proof. Scientists stood up and defended the mission. They explained light, physics, shadows, camera limits. Most experts agreed. Apollo 11 was real, but conspiracy theories do not live on facts alone. They live on feeling, and the feeling was strong. Why did the footage look unclear? Why was the camera already placed perfectly? Why did everything work at the last second? Questions without simple emotional answers create stories, and stories spread faster than truth. TV shows invited speakers. Some supported NASA. Some challenged them. Books were written. Videos were made. Debates grew. The moon landing became more than history. It became a mystery. NASA said, we have nothing to hide. But people replied, that is what secrets always say. Years later, new missions went to the moon, new photos were taken, new technology showed landing sites, tracks on the surface, evidence left behind. NASA said, here is your proof. Some people accepted it, some did not, because belief is not always about proof. It is about trust, and trust, once broken in other areas, is hard to repair. The moon stayed silent. It did not confirm anything. It did not deny anything. It just waited. Today, when people look at the moon, they see different things. Some see achievement, some see courage, some see mystery, and some still ask the same question. If humans really went there, why does it still feel unreal? The pictures remain frozen in time, still, silent, powerful. And as long as humans question the past, the moon landing mystery will never fully sleep. Fame came fast. When Apollo 11 returned, the world wanted stories. Reporters wanted emotions. Cameras wanted smiles. People wanted heroes who would speak loudly about the moon, but one man stayed different. Neil Armstrong did not enjoy the spotlight. While others spoke proudly, he stepped back. While crowds cheered, he stayed quiet. While questions grew louder, his answers became shorter. People noticed. At first they respected it. They said he was humble, a simple man, a pilot who did his duty and moved on, but later some began to wonder. In interviews, reporters asked easy questions. What did you feel on the moon? What did it look like? Was it beautiful? His answers were calm, careful. It was interesting. It was different. It was a job for most people. Walking on the moon was the greatest moment in human history. For him, it sounded like work. Some found this strange, others found it suspicious. Years passed, the questions did not stop. Instead, they changed. Now people asked harder things. Why are you so quiet? Why don't you talk about the details? Is there something you cannot say? He never showed anger. He never showed fear. He simply did not say much. When asked about conspiracy theories, he did not laugh. He did not argue, he did not explain deeply. He only said people should study the facts. Facts, but facts are cold, people want stories. In one rare moment, when asked directly if the moon landing was real, he answered slowly. It happened. Just 2 words, no excitement, no emotion, no story. That moment stayed with people. Why would a man who achieved the impossible sound so distant? Some believed the answer was simple. He was tired, he was private. He did not like attention, but others believed something else. They believed silence can be a shield. They believed maybe he knew things he could not share. The government had secrets before. Military pilots followed orders. Astronauts were trained to stay calm, to follow rules, to protect missions. What if part of the mission was silence? NASA denied this idea strongly. They said astronauts were free to speak. There were no secrets, no hidden rules. Still, people noticed patterns. Other astronauts spoke more freely. He did not. Other astronauts wrote books. He avoided them. Other astronauts enjoyed fame. He walked away from it. This difference fed the mystery. Some conspiracy believers said he was protecting something. Others said he was protecting himself, but there was no proof, only silence. One moment especially caught attention. At a public event years later, someone asked him a strange question. Not about the moon, not about NASA. Question was about truth. He paused. He looked down. Then he answered carefully. Truth is not always simple. That sentence spread everywhere. People asked, what does that mean? NASA said it meant nothing special. Conspiracy groups said it meant everything. The internet helped these ideas grow. Videos were edited, clips were cut, his pauses were slowed down, his words were repeated again and again. Silence became evidence, but silence can mean many things. It can mean peace. It can mean pain. It can mean wisdom. It can mean nothing at all. The man himself never explained. As years went by, the moon landing moved further into the past. New missions, new technology, new problems filled the world, but his silence stayed fresh. When he passed away, the world honored him. Flags were lowered, words were spoken, history books praised him, but one thing remained unchanged. He took his deepest thoughts with him. The moon stayed quiet. The man stayed quiet, and questions stayed alive. Maybe he was just a pilot who did his job, or maybe he was carrying a truth too heavy for words. No one knows, and that is what makes silence powerful, because sometimes what is not said becomes the loudest mystery of all. Silence never lasts forever. Even when one man stayed quiet, others began to speak, slowly at first, then louder. These were not famous people, not astronauts, not politicians. They were regular people. Engineers, teachers, photographers, students. They looked at the moon landing with fresh eyes, not with pride, not with anger, but with curiosity. One man studied light. He said the shadows looked strange. Another studied cameras. He said the photos felt staged. A teacher showed videos in class and asked students to think. Does this look natural? He asked. The question spread. This was a new kind of doubt. It was not emotional, it was technical. People began making simple videos. They drew lines on photos. They compared angles. They slowed down footage. They paused at strange moments, and the internet listened. Some voices said, this proves nothing. Others said, this proves everything. NASA responded again. They explained light reflection. They explained camera limits. They explained gravity differences. Their answers were long, detailed, scientific, but here was the problem. Most people do not think in science. They think in pictures, and the pictures still felt strange to them. A group of people noticed something else. Why did the original tapes disappear? NASA said the original moon landing tapes were recorded over by mistake. Technology was old, storage was limited. For many, this answer felt weak. How can the most important footage in history be lost? They asked. NASA said it was an accident, but accidents at that level are hard to believe. Then came another voice. A former NASA worker said something unexpected. We were under pressure, he said. Very big pressure. Pressure from politics, pressure from time, pressure from the world. He did not say the mission was fake. He did not say it was real. He just said pressure can change decisions. That was enough to start a fire. People asked new questions. Did NASA rush the mission? Did they hide mistakes? Did they change footage to protect public trust? These questions were dangerous. Because they did not attack science, they attacked honesty. NASA replied clearly. Yes, there was pressure. Yes, mistakes happened, but the landing was real. Still, doubt has a strange power. Once it enters the mind, it grows. Some people believed NASA fully. Some people believed the critics fully. Most people stayed in the middle. They were not saying it was fake. They were asking, what don't we know? TV shows invited debate. Documentaries were made. Books sold fast. The moon landing became a topic again. Not as history, but as mystery. Even schools noticed. Teachers said students were asking harder questions, not just what happened. But how do we know this was new? The moon landing became a lesson in trust, trust in science, trust in government, trust in records. One name appeared again and again. Neil Armstrong. People searched his old words, his pauses, his silence. They wanted answers from a man who never wanted to be a symbol, but symbols do not choose their role. NASA tried one last time to end the debate. They showed new images, clear images taken years later, landing sites, footprints, equipment left on the moon. These cannot be faked, they said. Many people accepted this. Others said technology can fake anything. The world was divided but not angry, just curious, and curiosity is powerful. The moon did not help. It stayed far away, quiet, unchanging. It did not send messages, it did not explain photos, it did not answer questions, it simply existed, and maybe that was the problem. Humans want answers, but space does not speak. As years passed, fewer people argued loudly, but the idea never died. It moved quietly from one generation to the next. Parents told children, teachers asked students, filmmakers created stories, not because they hated NASA, but because mystery keeps the mind awake. The moon landing became more than a mission, it became a mirror showing how humans think, how humans doubt, how humans search for truth, and one thing became clear. Even if the landing was real, the questions were real too, and questions, once born, never truly disappear. They wait, just like the moon. Watching the debate never ended. It only changed shape. Years passed and technology moved forward. Computers became faster, cameras became sharper, the internet became louder, information was everywhere and so was confusion. Some people said, now we can see everything clearly. Others said, now it is easier to fake everything. The moon landing stood in the middle of this new world. Scientists explained facts again and again. They showed data, numbers, experiments. They said truth lives in evidence, but humans do not live only on evidence. They live on feelings. Many people believed the moon landing was real. They trusted science. They trusted engineers, they trusted thousands of people who worked on the mission. Others felt something was off, not because of one photo, not because of one video, but because of history. Governments had hidden things before, wars had secret plans, experiments had been kept quiet, so people asked, why not this? Psychologists noticed something interesting. When something feels too big, the human mind looks for another story. A simpler story, a story where someone is in control. The moon landing was too powerful, too perfect, too important, so doubt was born. Some people believed conspiracy theories because they wanted to feel smart. Others believed because they wanted to feel safe. If something was planned, then chaos was not real. This was not about the moon anymore, it was about control. NASA understood this late. They thought facts were enough. They thought truth would win by itself, but truth needs trust, and trust is fragile. One scientist explained it simply. If 1,000 experts say something and one video says the opposite, many people will remember the video. Because stories stay longer than numbers. The name Neil Armstrong returned again in discussions, not as a man but as a symbol. People asked, why him? Why was he chosen? Why was he the first? Some said it was skill. Some said it was luck. Some said it was image. None of these answers felt complete. The human mind hates incomplete answers, so it fills the gaps. Online forums grew, comments grew, arguments grew, but something strange happened. People stopped fighting. Instead of saying, you are wrong, they said, I just don't believe it. Belief became personal. Some believed the moon landing was the greatest achievement in history. Some believed it was the greatest lie ever told. Both sides felt sure. But neither side had the full picture, because no single person sees everything. Thousands of people worked on Apollo 11. Engineers, scientists, pilots, doctors, technicians, camera operators, could all of them keep a lie? Some said yes, some said no, and that question stayed unanswered. Then new missions were planned, new rockets, new moon landings, new promises. People watched closely. If we go again, they said, then we will know. But even new missions did not fully end the doubt, because doubt does not need proof. It only needs space, and space is endless. One thinker said something simple. Maybe the moon landing was real, maybe mistakes were hidden, maybe footage was cleaned, maybe stories were shaped. Reality is rarely perfect, but humans like perfect stories, so they question them. The moon landing might be real history, but the mystery around it is human nature. We question because we care. We doubt because we think. We imagine because we are human. The moon stays the same, gray, silent, far away. It does not care if we believe or not, but humans do, because believing something big means trusting something bigger than ourselves. And that is hard, very hard, so the debate continues, not loudly, not angrily, quietly, in minds, in late-night thoughts, in questions without answers. And maybe that is the real story. Not whether humans went to the moon, but why after all this time we still look up and ask, did we really do it? Time moves forward, questions move with it. More than 50 years have passed since Apollo 11. The world is different now, technology is smarter, people are faster, information travels in seconds, but the moon is the same, gray, silent, watching. New satellites circle the moon today. New images are taken, they show landing sites. Footprints. Old equipment still resting on the surface. Scientists say this ends the debate. This is proof, they say, and for many people it is enough. They see the images, they trust the science. They move on, but not everyone does. Some people still feel something missing. They say proof answers facts, not feelings. And feelings are powerful. Humans do not only want to know what happened, they want to know everything. Why did it feel rushed? Why were mistakes hidden? Why were some things lost? NASA admits one thing now, the mission was dangerous, very dangerous. Many things almost failed, some decisions were made fast, some details were not shared with the public, not because it was fake, but because fear can break trust. NASA wanted hope, the world needed hope. The Cold War was dark, people feared the future. The moon landing gave light, a symbol, and symbols must look strong. That may be the missing piece. Not a lie, but a polished truth. The astronauts were brave, the engineers were human. The mission was real, but it was not perfect, and maybe that is what feels strange. History often removes cracks, but cracks make things real. The man at the center of it all, Neil Armstrong, never tried to explain the mystery. Maybe he knew something simple. Truth does not always need noise. He walked on the moon, he came back, he lived quietly. Maybe he understood something we forget. Not every question has a clear answer. Not every doubt needs to be destroyed because doubt keeps humans thinking. The moon landing changed the world. It pushed science forward. It inspired generations. It showed what humans can do. Even people who doubt it talk about it. That alone shows its power. If it was fake, it would have faded. If it was meaningless, it would be forgotten. But it is not. It lives in classrooms, in documentaries, in late-night debates, in the human mind. Maybe the real mystery is not on the moon. Maybe it is inside us. Why do we doubt greatness? Why do we search for shadows in light? Why does silence feel louder than words? Because humans are curious, and curiosity is our strongest force. The moon landing may never feel fully complete to everyone, and that is okay, because history is not just facts written in books. History is how we feel about those facts. Some will always believe, some will always doubt. Both are human. The moon does not choose sides, it does not speak, it does not explain, it just stays there, watching Earth change. Watching humans argue, watching questions rise and fall, and maybe one day when humans return again not to prove anything but to explore again, the mystery will finally rest, or maybe it never will, because some stories are not meant to end. They are meant to be remembered, questioned, and passed on. The moon still watches, and we still look up, wondering,